Every election year has its characters. This one, I think, has more than most. This year, part of the country is having a really good, exciting time, and the rest of the country is having a often hilarious and often alarming time getting familiar with the cast of anti-establishment Tea Party folks who have beaten the old guard Republicans in this year's primaries. But of the crop of, let's call them characters, in this year's elections, there is one Republican candidate who is in territory so uncharted that it makes me want to learn a new word that means more uncharted than uncharted. The candidate's name is Jim Russell. He is the Republican Party's nominee against Congresswoman Nita Lowey in New York's 18th district, which is just north of New York City. Jim Russell's occupation is described by Politico.com this week as a Christian conservative author and activist. But what you really need to know about him is what he believes about you, and whether or not, according to Jim Russell, it is natural for you to have contact with people of a different race or religion than you. Mr. Russell's views on race mixing are detailed in his 2001 essay titled The Western Contribution to World History, which was published in a white supremacist journal called the Occidental Quarterly. In that essay, he writes, quote, "While liberals and universalists constantly yammer about bringing us all together and how diversity is our strength, it may be suggested that the biological function of human language and culture is just the opposite. That is, to keep discrete groups apart." He also approvingly quotes old racist arguments from T.S. Eliot about what constitutes an optimum society. Quote, "The population should be homogeneous. What is still more important is unity of religious background, and reasons of race and culture combine to make any large number of free-thinking Jews undesirable." So there's that. And then Jim Russell gets even weirder. So weird that I tried sort of practicing today and found that I was unable to read the next excerpt without losing my composure. And so I enlisted our dubious racial allegories correspondent, Kent Jones, to read it for us.
It has been demonstrated that finches raised by foster parents of a different species of finch will later exhibit a lifelong sexual attraction toward the alien species. One wonders how a child's sexual imprinting mechanism is affected by forcible racial integration and near continual exposure to media stimuli promoting interracial contact.
Yes, finches, the birds, and interracial contact. Major party candidate for Congress, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Russell also inveighs against, quote, "the culpability of media moguls who deliberately popularize miscegenation in films directed toward adolescents and pre-adolescents. In the midst of this onslaught against our youth, parents need to be reminded that they have a natural obligation, as essential as providing food and shelter, to instill in their children an acceptance of appropriate ethnic boundaries for socialization and for marriage." It's 9:31 p.m. Have you instilled your children with appropriate ethnic boundaries for socialization today? In a year of extreme politics, where in particular there's a lot of extreme us versus them stuff, hi, Mr. Gingrich, Jim Russell may have actually figured out what it takes to claim the label of extreme in conservative politics this year. The Westchester County Republican Party says it is doing all it can to get Jim Russell off the ballot, even though he is their nominee for Congress. The state party's director of communications, in fact, openly called Jim Russell a racist and a kook. It should also be noted, however, that that same Republican Party guy who called Jim Russell a racist and a kook also said that the New York Republican candidate who sent out this email to his friends and supporters, this email photoshopping the president and first lady to look like a blaxploitation-era pimp and prostitute, the same New York State Republican Party spokesman denouncing racist Finch guy Jim Russell as a racist, said of the New York Republican candidate who sent this out, quote, "The New York Republican Party fully supports Carl Palladino and stands behind his candidacy 100%. 100%. So now we know, I guess, where they're drawing the line this year.